back. You're now watching the political segment on the weekend show. And I was just having a conversation with our guest because most times when you do a certain thing, it's now harder when the tables are flipped and you now need to talk about it. But what we want to talk about is media, and it's commonly said that media is the fertile state of the realm, which means after the judiciary, the executive, the legislative arm, media is really the fourth arm of government.
Yeah.
However, we've seen moves across the world to regulate media. But what's interesting about it, like we said earlier, is should governments be responsible for regulating media or should the platforms? This is quite interesting because in recent times you've seen turnaround by the likes of Mark Zuckerberg, who is deciding to shave off the DEI, which is the Diversity, Equality and Inclusion department in his Meta, which now covers Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Now, this now is a battle between free speech. Who should be in charge of dictating what free speech is? Should it be the government? And so some governments come in and it's supportive, some aren't. Why is this important? In Nigeria, over the last 10 years, we've seen a couple of journalists get arrested. But it gets worse because it's now harder to define who a journalist is because anybody with 5,000, 2,000 followers can say they are bloggers and start putting out news, which in some cases may be unethical, could be fake or misrepresented. And so we'll be having a conversation about media in 2025, what projections we should expect, and what the year would look like in the media space. And joining us we have
Itodo Abba, who is a broadcast journalist here in Nigeria.
Good morning.
Good
welcome
morning. And
on the
happy New
weekend
Year.
show. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You have over 10 years in this space, and that's not an easy space. And we were talking about it earlier that you start on media, and next thing you find out that you've been doing this for 5 years, you've been doing this for 10 years. My first stint on media was in 2007 when I did my NYSC with NTA in Oshogbo in Ocean State. And this is 2025, and that's how time flies. And so you have seen the evolution of media. What's your take on the media space and how it's evolved, especially in a time where there's this debate, do traditional media platforms now get their news of digital media, or does digital media get their news of traditional media? What's your view on the evolution and how it's going?
I'd say right now it's a mix of both, but when I started off, a lot of online platforms, then it was just starting. Facebook at the time was big when I started, and they would typically get information or news from traditional media, radio, TV, and the likes. But right now, it's an intertwined because a lot of, so to speak, traditional media platforms are now on digital, and that's the way for them to be able to grow a large following and be able to give credible news, because we know how fake news tends to thrive on digital, because people feel it gets them more likes, more clicks, more engagements, and they'll typically put out something fake, something sensational, because they feel it's an easy way to growing the numbers. And we know that on these platforms, there's an incentive from getting a certain amount of engagement. So people will typically go for something catchy, whether or not it's real or it's fake. So I would say in the last few years, it's been interesting to see how well and how fun the media space has been, with both sides trying to get leverage, trying to be the ones on top. And I would say both digital and traditional can thrive because they need each other to be able to do what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that last point, actually. I was just nodding. So would you say that is media freedom in Nigeria?
Well, freedom is relative. It's interesting to see that even online, people who are not tagged journalists, but they're just freelancing and putting out information, get also tracked down and treated in unfair ways by authorities who they've either called out or put a spotlight on. It's safe to say the freedom is not the way it should be. But then again, there's a thin line between free speech and hate speech. What information are you putting out? Are you setting about what you're saying about the next person? We've seen various cases of defamation. And while defamation can be a bit of a confusing or interesting definition, people have been arrested, beaten up, maltreated based on what they said, what they shared about a certain person. So freedom Not so much. Even for the regular journalists, there's a reservation as to how much thoughts they can share when they're speaking on certain subjects due to regulations, on these platforms. So we can do better with the freedom. Journalists should be able to speak on certain subjects that are trending, be able to call out the government, but in doing that, you can be respectful and not fear for what could come after you've been able to speak about these situations that tend to play out.
Okay.
Is there, sorry.
Interesting. Yeah, sorry to
Yeah.
cut you short, Didi, but I want to put you on the spot. Most of us in the media space, you hear people talk about how there's always an agenda, and so this station supports this, that station supports this. On the weekend show, one of the reasons why I do this is nobody tells me do this or don't do this. What we are guided by are the NBC regulations, and so we're allowed to hold government accountable, to have these conversations. You on this show, we didn't send you any questions because we want genuine and organic conversation. In your space and in radio, do you get called into meetings where they say you can't speak XYZ about this administration or the other? Because that's what a lot of people believe, and so I would like you to clarify that.
Okay, so we are a talk station. I work with a talk station, rather. And I don't remember if I've ever been called in to say, you can't talk about this person or about this subject. What the advice typically is, and it will be for any journalist, is to have a robust conversation, listen to both sides of the divide, and be able to help the listener understand what, what pertains to each side and how they can reach a conclusion based on whatever information that you've shared. But being called to say, oh, you can't say this, you can't say that, that would just be stifling the conversation and you being a journalist in the real sense of it.
I just wanted to clarify that because we've had some people who have told us, oh, we don't want to come on your station because we feel you people will be too harsh with us because of our affiliation. And so I just wanted to clarify that. But back to you and your question.
This question is for both of you, since you're both in media. Is there a world where you see actual freedom of speech for journalists in Nigeria? I'll start with you.
That world, I'm not sure it's the world we're in right now, because the government would always feel like it's doing the best for its citizens. And when it's been called out on the things that it's lacking, on the things that it's slow to achieve, it would feel threatened. And not the government directly, but supporters who tend to fight for people that haven't given them the leeway to doing that. So there would always be somebody out there who feels like you are doing too much, you are saying too much, you're criticizing too much, and would make that freedom unachievable.
Andy, how about you?
So as a sociologist, I am taught to know that there would always be the good and the bad, there would always be the ups and the downs. I don't support regulating speech. However, I'm a huge fan, and Itodo knows this, of ethical journalism. People who want to call themselves journalists have to get some form of training or some form of self-development to do what they are doing. And because of little bits of the basis and the foundation, which is like objectivity, like fact-checking. You can't just come out and say whatever you want to say and then it flies. However, on the other hand, I feel that we already have laws for libel and scandal and defamation, which are civil suits and not criminal charges. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we have, fortunately and unfortunately, we have the Cybercrime Prevention and Prohibition Bill, which is called the Cybercrime Bill, basically, which now criminalizes some of these bits which falls under defamation and libel, because the same act puts it under things like cyber stalking, cyberbullying. A good example is the case with the musician, two musicians actually, Speed Darlington and Burna Boy. This is a case which should have been a civil suit. Why is someone being locked up for over a month because of words exchange? Until you go to court and it's seen as a criminal offense which causes XYZ harm and all of that.
Yeah.
But cases around defamation, libel, scandal, and the like should be civil cases and not criminal cases. But it's a hard line to draw. So I don't think we would ever have a media freedom. I don't think there should be, I don't think there's anything as complete freedom, neither is there anything as complete security. But structures are important, and it's what keeps institutions alive and institutional memory. And especially if the media is seen as the fourth arm of government, the media has to be held up to some certain standard. I watch some journalists on TV and radio sometimes, and I'm like, oh, this isn't the most ethical. This isn't how it's meant to be. Is this your opinion? However, I've seen, so in the UK, about 2 years ago, there was a report which came out from their regulators where they were actually encouraging presenters to have an opinion because they felt that the news and media no longer had any life to it, because it's like, read what you're told or what your producers or whatever. And they were encouraging presenters and reporters to be able to say, okay, this is A and this is B and this is my take on it, just to give like, because maybe you're speaking from a position of experience. What do you think about bringing in opinions?
Well, having opinions, it means you're taking a side. But there's a way to put your opinion out there without putting your opinion out there. Journalists know how to work around these things. And in the event that you're having a conversation about a certain situation in Nigeria, for instance, and both parties are not present to defend themselves, if you have one party present, you have to be able to defend the other person in their absence or strike a balance in the conversation. And if both parties are not present, you can have a conversation and look at it from what you think will be the angles both sides will take it from. So in that way, you've somewhat had an opinion without making it your opinion. You've just been able to strike a balance and see things from both sides of the conversation.
You said that places, countries, nations, they need structure in whatever they do in various organizations. But a particular country which has freedom of speech is the United States. For example, when Trump was president, we could see all the reports going in, and I don't remember seeing any journalists being arrested. So why can't we implement that and also have a voice as journalists, as media people here in Nigeria, even if we obviously don't have to cross the line of being unethical?
I would say I agree with you, and that's a question which should be asked, and I don't have that answer because there are comments I could make right now, and I get fined some amounts, which is in
You should
millions.
have an opinion.
However, the reason why this is a bit concerning is even if we can't say certain things on TV, people can go on and say them on social media, and it's reaching a wider audience. And was it 2017 or a couple of years ago, a US president was kicked off Twitter. In Nigeria, controversial as it seems, the president posted something and it was flagged as inappropriate, and the president took off Twitter for Nigeria for over 6 months, which is the reason why we're having this conversation. If a president could be kicked off social media by a private company, X, and then now the president is back as president, and you see Facebook saying, you see Meta, Mark Zuckerberg saying, oh, we're put under pressure by the Biden administration, and so we're going in line with the Trump administration, and we feel everybody should have freedom of speech. It makes me wonder, who is in control? Is it the private companies that own this platform, or should government be able to say, hey, how about we have some level of moderation, or you have a government representative who can be there just as a watchdog of sorts. I know some agencies in Nigeria, they have what they call a monitor. So let's say they have a training, it's a monitor to ensure that everybody attends and they do what they should be doing. And so this is me deflecting from her question because I don't have an answer to that, but it comes back to big media. The billionaires are now buying publishing houses. A cartoonist just resigned because she made a cartoon and she depicted, I think, Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post. And they were like, oh, we don't want you saying things against the government. And so she had to retract, and she was like, she's never been told to do that, and so she's putting it away. Who should be in control? Should government have control, a level of control over the platform owners, or should the platform owners be free to say, I'll decide when you should say what you want to say and who it appeals to?
Well, we know how things played out when when the ban on X was lifted in the last administration, and you know how there was a bit of a back and forth as to X, at the time Twitter, coming to Nigeria to establish an office and be under some regulation by Nigerian laws. How that played out, how that conversation died, no one knows. But with the way X is playing out right now, I would say that there's a bit of control, because we have community notes, which regardless of what you share, you're able to tell if it's real or not, and how you can reach a conclusion based off whatever it is that you've read. But in an answer to your question, asking if the government or the platform should regulate, what is the regulation about? What is it for? What exactly are they trying to stop? Because we've seen how conversations about social media has been had in the National Assembly, and how the uproar from Nigerians have been able to change certain things or certain decisions from being taken. Case in point will be the time when the national anthem was changed, and a bill was put on the floor for penalties to be put for those who do not sing it or who do not obey the national anthem. And the uproar from Nigerians on social media led to that bill being stepped down, and many other bills like that, many other policies that could have been put forward. So it means that if there's a regulation, the voices of the people and Nigerians in this context will be stifled, and there will be as much effects to bringing about the change that they want. So it's safe to say, if there should be a regulation at all, it boils down to understanding why and what the values the people hold. And government typically influences the way Nigerians act, whether or not we like it. If a Nigerian acts some sort of way, they would always blame it back to the government. What steps or in what ways is the government acting right enough to influence the people to also act right? We've heard careless statements from spokespersons as well. And in regulating social media, would we say these people would also be regulated, or would there be a case of, for lack of a better term, reach and poll? Who you know and you've been led by yourself. We see how these things play out in Nigeria. So the regulation, I'm not sure it would do much good. And if we're going to look at what X is doing right now, there's a bit of regulation, somewhat. It's not as intense as it used to be. I know on IG and Instagram right now, anything goes. You'll be shocked at what you see on Instagram. But we're hoping that, the X regulation still holds somewhere. And with what Mark is doing, maybe, just maybe, we'll see a bit of a regulation somewhat.
So it actually does worry me that I feel safer on Instagram than X now, because now anybody who has a smartphone can create an account on any social media platform. We've seen how the younger generation owns TikTok. Now there's a ruling in the US by the 19th which may have to take off TikTok from the US because it said it affects national security and the likes. However, X, since Elon Musk took over, he has eased a bit of free speech. So the likes of Andrew Tate is back on X, and he can say whatever he wants to say. And the initial problem was that he was demeaning to the LGBTQ community and women and all the likes. However, with this freedom, there is an upsurge of adult content on X, which means if you have a 13-year-old who goes on X just to see banter, with what they're doing with algorithms, you don't need to follow people. So on your For You page, you could just open and you see some type of content. I mean, at some point, it's based on the type of content you see that they bring it. But sometimes you go on this platform and you just stumble on stuff you rather would not have seen.
Yeah, I think the algorithm shows you what you're searching for.
Yeah.
You wouldn't randomly see...
you see adult.
No, you wouldn't.
But sometimes they push multiple to you to see what you dwell on and the like. And my concern is adults can do whatever they want to then. I mean, people will still do it on their private browsers or whatever if they want to. But the fact that children now have access to these platforms...
There should be a certain form of regulation.
And that regulation falls on the parents. How old should a child be before having access to a smartphone? And with some of these softwares, you're able to control how much content these children consume or what they can do on these platforms. I know Facebook used to have a limit of 13. You had to be 13 years before you could register an account. I'm not sure if that has been relaxed for now. But it falls on the parents. It falls on the guardian or whomever to control what these children consume online. YouTube, for instance, has YouTube Kids. So you don't have to be on the general YouTube, which also has interesting content as well. So it all depends on how these children, are regulated. Yeah, I hope. Yes.
So before we go, looking forward, what innovations or changes do you believe are necessary for broadcast journalism to thrive in Nigeria?
So AI has changed a lot of things. AI gives you leeway to get in information. You know, you're able to have broad conversations and get inputs from, you know, from different, from diverse people or diverse groups. So I'd say with innovation for broadcast journalists and in 2025, I'm hoping that more journalists are able to intentionally utilize some of these tools that are available while having or taking personal trainings to be able to access the database, because it's one thing to have these platforms available. It's another thing to be able to make good use of it, utilize it to the fullest. So if more people, beyond journalists, every citizen is a journalist in their own little way, is able to utilize these innovations that have been put forward, I think it would, you know, help in ensuring that we have a more intentional and fact-checked information being put out.
But on the flip side, AI, and I'm a tech enthusiast, I love and live tech. It's quite interesting. So a friend of mine has a startup. And so he has a concept notes, like a one-pager about the show. And he got this AI tool where he put that information, and he was able to produce a 10-minute podcast where a man and a lady were speaking, and it was a complete podcast. How does this now affect what we call fake news?
So you're able to, AI only has the information that has been put in it. How do you query it is how it matters. You can get different information on a particular subject or topic that you put into the query box or the question box, right? And the journalist, in doing their research, can be able to sift through and see which is fake, which is real, how to put this information out there without misleading the general public. So I think it also boils down on the person who's using the platform to, in their own discretion, be certain that whatever information has been put in there is double-checked and is the right one.
3 of 3.
Yeah.
You have to answer this. We won't let you go without answering this.
Okay.
Yeah. So what are 3 things you achieved last year?
Oh,
What
wow.
are 3 things you're looking forward to this year? What's the third one?
And 3 things you want to stop.
Yes.
Oh, so 3 things I achieved last year. It might seem really basic. 3 things: I was constant at the gym,
Okay.
very constant all the way. I got to work in time. I think that counts for something.
You don't have a choice. You want to
I got-
But I mean, kudos.
Yeah, and the third one would be I try to stay happy constantly, regardless of what was playing
I
out.
need to come for lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, 3 things. What's the other one?
The 3 things you're looking forward to this year.
Looking forward to starting another degree, hopefully, you know. Staying constant at the gym and traveling more.
Okay. And
Yes.
3 things you want to stop. While you're thinking, I'll tell you one, because I know at some point you asked me mine, and I'm not telling you today. But I really need to stop eating late. I've told myself 7 p.m. It's not possible. I've told myself 8 p.m. Now the bar has been pushed to 10 p.m. I'm trying to bring it back down to 8 p.m. But yeah, I've given you time to think. 3 things I want to stop.
3 things I want to stop. Let's see. Going to bed early. Because I'm always up at night. It's weird. It's my body clock. I have to find a way to fine-tune it.
Yeah.
I think one suffices. I can't think of any other 2 that I want to
Oh,
stop. I think.
that's good. That means you don't have as many bad habits as the
Some
rest
people.
of us.
No. Maybe stop wearing black every time. That could
I
count as
like
some.
black.
Yeah, same here.
Well, I had to stop. Let me tell you an interesting story. And people, it's amazing how much words have an effect on you. I'm a Chelsea fan. I like blue. And I don't wear blue all the time. I even wear black. But someone had watched me on TV like twice. And coincidentally, the person saw me wearing blue. And the person sent me a message and said, it's like you like blue a lot too. So I'm sure somebody will see it and say, this man likes
Like
black. And they don't see you every day, but that just gets in their head. But I think you look great in black.
Thank you.
and
Thank you very much.
That's something you should keep up. Itada, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you
for having
We will be having you more on the show this year, especially on matters which affect media. And that's also because the Nigerian government in the last year signed an agreement with China, and 2 out of the 5 MOUs were around media. One was cooperation between NTA and the Chinese TV, which I don't know how that plays out, and then media cooperation between Nigeria and Chinese and the Chinese government. The reason why this is quite concerning is that the Chinese government isn't known to be the best with media freedom. So are we trying to learn from them how they do it? Are they trying to learn from us? And we don't have the details, but while that is a developing story, we'll see how that goes, and we'll definitely have conversations. Keep on doing what you do. I've been on your show a couple of times over the year. We're proud of you, and that's why we've brought you here to have this conversation and share
Thank
your
you.
thoughts
Thank you for having me.
2025.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we have Entrepreneur Spotlight on The Weekend Show. Don't go away.